Welcome to the Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Pre-Grant Workshop webinar. I am Andrea Nelson with the City of Houston Planning and Development Department. Today, I will be leading you through the pre-grant workshop previously held at the 5th Ward Multi-Service Center on July 29, 2010. There are 4 parts to this workshop, with time for discussion over public engagement and the 6 livability principles. You will first hear from Diana Ponce de Leon with the City of Houston Planning and Development Department, who will introduce the 3 speakers. The speakers will explain more about the Regional Sustainability Grant.
I'm going to introduce our first 3 speakers. I won't be interrupting in between them to come up, so I'll just introduce all of them. First, why we're here today, we're going to have Wanda LeBlanc. She's the Director of Housing Issues and the 2010 Census for Harris County. Wanda LeBlanc currently serves as the Director of Housing Issues and the 2010 Census with Harris County Judge Ed Emmett's office. Prior to her work in the public sector, she held sales responsibilities with several leading organizations: Rocks Corporation, Digital Equipment Corporation, which is now HP, Information Services Group, and Ranger Industrial Supply. In addition to her duties within Judge Emmett's office, she is board member of the Incarnate Word Academy located in downtown Houston and the Harris County Hospital District Foundation. She was born in Lafayette, Louisiana, and she completed her undergraduate degree and received her master's in business administration with a concentration in management and international business from Our Lady of the Lake University. Next, for the next section, we will have Jeff Table, Director of Community and Environmental Planning for the Houston-Galveston Area Council. Jeff Table is the Director of Community and Environmental Planning at the Houston-Galveston Area Council, where he oversees the agency's community and environmental planning. He has 27 years of experience in urban and regional planning, including 23 in his current position. Actively, he's involved in community service, professional development, and planning education. Jeff is a former president of the Texas chapter APA, American Planners Association. And in 2008, he was inducted as a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners. He received his master's in urban planning from Texas A&M and his BS in life sciences from the University of Nebraska. Last, we will have Marlene Gaffrick, the Director of the City of Houston's Planning and Development Department. She has 29 years experience in land development, including ordinance development, implementation, enforcement, permitting, and coordination with public agencies and special districts. She was named Planning Director by Mayor Bill White in 2005. She holds her bachelor's in economics in urban and regional planning from Missouri State University. She has been instrumental in the creation and implementation of many new and amended ordinances to encourage growth while practicing and preserving neighborhoods. And with that, I'm going to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Wanda LeBlanc.
Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody today? You know, it's real interesting when you sit here and you hear what you've done throughout all of your lifetime of working history. I'm impressed myself. So. Anyway, I would like to welcome everyone here this morning. I am here as the liaison to Harris County Judge Emmett. I'm one of his directors, and I am the Director of Housing Issues and the 2010 Census. Does everybody remember the census? Okay. Recently, I have been involved with the 2010 U.S. Census and had the opportunity to have a true in-depth look at Harris County as to who we are, where we live, and where we work. The preliminary results of the 2010 Census, Harris County and the region are growing to the tune of approximately 4.1 million people for the county. And for the region, it's approximately 6 million people. That's tremendous. The Houston region has a robust housing industry, outstripping production in every major metropolitan area in the state of Texas. The industry appears to be resilient as well as weathering the nationwide downturn in the housing market remarkably well, and continually to produce more than 1/3 of our state's supply of housing. The region has a unique approach to land use regulation, which maximizes flexibility and accommodates housing diversity. Other factors that are important to the region's real estate market successes include the strength of energy production economy, increased international trade, and a diverse transportation network. How do we deal with the expansion of the population and maximize these successes? The region needs a sustainable plan for its future. What is sustainability? I'll let you think about that for a minute. Sustainability is the action that we take today to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. We as a region need to start planning better connections for housing, transportation, economic development, and our environment. How do we do this? Any ideas? Have people come together like this? That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? The Houston-Galveston Area Council and a consortium of local governments, nonprofit organizations, and allied public and private sector partners seek to develop a regional plan for sustainable development. This plan will continue to provide communities with the opportunity to comprehensively address critical challenges such as housing, transportation, environmental protection, that sounds better, and economic development. The planning process will foster collaboration across jurisdictional boundaries. Local communities that adopt a regional plan for sustainability or similar local plan may be competitive nationally for emerging federal funding opportunities. We are glad to welcome some of our consortium partners here today. If our partners would please stand as you are mentioned. These partners are HGAC, City of Houston, Harris County, Metro, Waller County Economic Development Partnership, Chambers County, City of Huntsville, Fort Bend County, Missouri County, City of Galveston, City of Bay City, Port of Houston, Houston Wilderness, Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, thank you, Neighborhood Centers, Inc., United Way, Gulf Coast Economic Development District, Greater Houston Builders Association, TSU, Transportation and Urban Planning Groups, BN Teamworks, Houston Area Recite Center, Oliver Blueprint, Blueprint Houston Center for Houston's Future, and Montgomery County Community Development. Let's give everyone a hand. Thank you so much today for hearing my speech. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I guess I will introduce.
Thank you, Wanda. I saw Wanda just before we got started, and I was talking about needing to get us off on a high energy level. Now I'm kind of wishing I hadn't, because I don't know how to follow that, but I'll do the best I can. As I think most of you are familiar, but for those of you who are not, HGAC is a voluntary association of 132 local governments in a 13-county area. So it's Harris and 12 surrounding counties. And I know we've got a very Houston, Harris County-centric group today, but I think it's important as we think about our region of 6 million people, which we're forecasting is going to grow to 9.5 million people in 5 years, that we're really all in this ship together. We tend to live and work and be concerned about our neighborhoods and our cities and our county, but really when you stop and think about our metropolitan economy, we're stitched together in a lot of ways that about every day. So I'm going to actually go back to a couple of questions that Wanda raised and give you my take. First of all, why are we here today? We need to build a stakeholder network to get this plan done. I am so gratified to see all the people in this room. I'm going to tell you we're going to need a group 5 times this big to really adequately represent the stakeholder interests of a region this size. I've been at this at HGAC about 23 years. This is by far the biggest, most complex project we've ever worked on. I think our other partners are beginning to see that as well. But the time is right, and the time is now to do it. I think we are fortunate to have the challenges of great growth ahead of us. Sure, there are challenges, but I would prefer those to the challenges of decline. We have the economic energy, human energy of new people moving in. We're a young and diverse region. And I think we can begin to channel some of that type of energy into a dialogue about what kind of future we want to have. I've heard it said that we're going to have growth whether we like it or not. So why not have growth that we like? We're applying for this grant, in my view, for 3 reasons. And I always believe in not beating around the bush when talking about the money. And again, Wanda mentioned it. Not only do we believe that there will be new federal funding opportunities for sustainability, and that having a sustainability plan will be a prerequisite for this, but I think at least as it pertains to the major funding programs of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the regulatory and funding programs administered by the Environmental Protection Agency, that they're increasingly going to insist regions have sustainability. They don't want to see a bunch of different plans from 132 entities. They want to see that we're on the same page and moving in the same direction. So I think it is essential for us to get in this game. But whether we're ready or not, here we come. Second fact is I think we have really an opportunity to begin getting out of some of the silos that we work in. Obviously, we need to have specializations. We need to have focus or we'll just be all over the place. We've got housing groups, we've got local food groups, we've got environmental groups, we've got transportation groups, we've got design groups, we've got job creating groups. We don't really have any sort of a forum where those conversations can take place at the same time. I'm hoping that the forum we have today will begin a dialogue that will go on for years and decades, frankly, amid those groups. So it's really a chance to get to that kind of cross-cutting level that we often don't have a chance to do, especially government agencies are organized. Final thing I want to mention to you is this is going to be highly competitive. Every metropolitan area in the country, I predict, is going to be going for this program. There isn't going to be enough funding to go around. I'm not going to kid you, it's going to be a tough sled because there are places that have been working on this longer than we have. It's well worth the effort. I think people in Washington, D.C. need to understand that we can fill a room like this of people easily 5 times over interested in sustainability. We need to tell the story of the greater Houston region. As Wanda said, we don't do it perhaps in the same way that they do in Portland or Boston, but we're doing it. And we need to get that message to Washington. We are doing all the sustainability principles in our own way, in a way that makes sense, and in a way that has allowed us to maintain a strong economy, maintain affordable housing, maintain social and economic equity, and maintain a diverse population. We like it that way. We think other people ought to not necessarily judge us by some of the images that they may have of this region, simply because we don't approach land use regulation the same way everybody else does. So I think that's critical in telling our story in this grant process. I thought Wanda did a great job in talking about some of the components of sustainability, but as I see it, and in the kind of programs I work with at HGAC, we're going to be asking questions about how do we want to get around? How do you unpack that from questions of housing and environmental protection, economic development? Yeah, we can build bike trails, but if people can't get to them, and if they don't go to places that people need to go, what good do they do? So we've got to coordinate that with our schools and our neighborhoods and where our jobs are. What do we eat? I've heard it said that today's kids, when you ask where does food come from, well, it comes from the store. Well, where does the store get it? I think that is a key to having our rural areas as part of this partnership as well. What's their benefit in partnering with Central Houston? There's tremendous economic benefit in local food movement, tourism, and how can we better create that sort of synergy among city and rural area. Obviously, jobs and housing are closely intermingled with issues of land use and design. How can we build communities that are aesthetically attractive, a mix of housing affordability, allow places for local businesses to thrive, and let us walk to transit. Let us walk between some of our errands and not have to take a car trip necessarily everywhere we go. So that's a little more visual idea of some of what we think are going to be key elements of this grant as we put it together. Those of us in the bureaucratic realms know that there are already a lot of federal and state and local required plans and things that we do. And I've heard some people say, why should we waste time going for this grant? We're already doing all these sorts of things. Yes, all those plans are out there, but they're not really in the service of any sort of regional vision. Where do we want to go with this great ship that we're steering? That snapped a little bit faster than I thought it would. So we're really seeing this as an opportunity. We don't want to usurp or do anybody's local planning. That's all going to be up to individual cities, individual neighborhoods, counties, and like that. But we view this regional plan as a organizing influence, that some of these local plans can begin to serve greater goals rather than just functioning in their individual silos. Now, I'm about to take a risk and put a map up on the wall. Next, but I thought I'd cop out and put a map of Dallas-Fort Worth up there instead. We haven't quite gotten to this level yet, but I do want to tell you that our competitors, if you will, are already on this wavelength. Prior to this grant, the Metro organization in Dallas-Fort Worth has created a Vision 2050 plan. They've already looked at areas where they want to promote growth. They've looked at a program to revitalize their traditional small towns and satellite areas, environmental protection. I'm not saying that's what our plan is necessarily going to look like, but it could be an outgrowth, because at the end of all this, I think we need to have a regional growth vision everybody's bought into, hopefully that everybody can see some benefit for their community. Now, about 5 years ago, we did the first step on this in partnership with a lot of organizations in this route called Envision Houston Region. And those of you who participated remember we put some stickers down on where we thought the growth should go. And people really, this is not rocket science. People were very astute in saying, well, gee, maybe we should focus growth along transit corridors, create more walkable centers, preserve more floodplain and open space. That's a good idea, but we kind of stopped it there because it really wasn't just a transportation issue. It's an everything issue. And that's really what we're talking about with sustainability, was how does that all connect? How does it affect what we do in all the roles we play in the stakeholder organizations and governments that are represented here today? I'm going to close with a couple more thoughts. One thing is there's been some confusion, I think, about what exactly the it is as far as this grant application. Our coalition is going for the maximum $5 million planning grant amount. And we're going to need to raise $1 million in local match to qualify for that. So we are going to need to have in-kind contributions and some people writing checks to make this happen. We're going to need every penny of this and more to do this right on a scale and kind of engagement that needs to happen to really make this a viable plan. Again, as I said before, talking about the money is not in this grant in and of itself. $5 million is a lot. We'll chew it up easily with the scale and breadth of this effort. But I think future funding streams, especially from the federal level, are going to be increasingly tied to getting this done. So that's key. And I think the time frame is tight. We've got until August 23rd to get this in, but hopefully we'll be successful, and once we find out that the light is green, we can really begin this conversation in earnest and as I said, broaden our communication with all of you. So I will close it there and let our cleanup hitter, Marlene Gaffrick, come in and give you some of the details. Thank you very much.
In case you all wonder why Sungman keeps popping up on the stages, we have a test webinar that we are doing today over at 611 Walker. So I want to say hello to our webinar folks over at 611 Walker. We've heard about the growth of this region, and we have some choices that we need to make. How do we want to grow as a region, and how do we want to all interconnect all of this growth? And we want it to be responsible growth. Houston's had a very suburban style development pattern in terms of our rules have always been very suburban. We encourage development out in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, and that's very suburban. But we're recognizing that if we're going to grow and as a region, we need to think about how we're going to grow and what those components are of building a sustainable community, recognizing the population density and how we need to achieve that growth. And we don't have a plan in place at the city to address it. And that's why we think the Sustainability Community Grant is an opportunity for this region. You've heard Wanda talk about opportunity, you've heard Jeff talk about opportunity, and I'm going to talk about opportunity. But before I get into opportunity, I want to touch on some facts. And so when I'm the cleanup, I get the technical side. So don't glaze over, because these are really important elements to set the stage for the work this morning. There we go. So here, there are 6 areas that the grant addresses, and we have to think about these from the hat that HUD wears, the hat that EPA wears, and then the hat that DOT wears. And we've got to look at it from their perspective as we put this grant application together. At the federal level, they're trying to break down the silos. At the city, we're trying to break down silos within the city, with HGAC and our other partners. And we have to start talking and having a conversation together. And that's why we're trying to do this grant, so we all can participate and think about this regional growth. We can't operate as individual groups or entities anymore. We've got to think about our growth. So we're going to look at these 6 areas that's on the screen. And by the way, I'm not a believer in reading what's on the screen. I figure y'all can read, and I'm going to just make my points. So the first area is to promote more transportation choices. And we want to decrease the transportation cost. I don't know if you all have seen the studies in terms of how high the transportation costs influence what people can afford. People drive until they can afford the house, but they don't factor in the cost of what it takes to drive to their workplace every day. So we want to focus on decreasing the transportation costs. We also want to reduce our energy consumption and dependence on foreign oil. We also want to improve the air quality by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we want to promote public health. The next area is to promote equitable and affordable housing, and we want it to be inclusive. It needs to include people of all ages, incomes, races, and ethnicities, and they should have expanded access to these strategically located and energy-efficient housing choices. We want to enhance economic competitiveness. Now, this one is kind of hard for me to get my head around, and maybe you all understand it. But how I kind of put my hat, try and put in my head as I put on their hat, is we want to centrally locate employment, housing, transportation, food. It's how we grow as a region and how we locate it all together so that we have an economic advantage. And we also want to create environmental efficiency as we go through this process. The next one is support existing communities. They talk about reusing land. We've not really thought about land as being a renewable resource, but we can reuse our land. We can tear down and rebuild on soil. So we want to think about how we can infill housing, how we do TOD development. And then we also want to make sure we've got infrastructure that's already in place and we've invested in that infrastructure. So how can we go in and upgrade the infrastructure if it needs to be upgraded so that we can continue to encourage development and infill, and then also support the existing neighborhoods. So we have a little bit of a tightrope, a balance that we're going to have to walk as we go through this process. And then how do we safeguard our rural landscape? And that's going to be a challenge because some of our rural communities will want to grow. So how do we grow responsibly is going to be really important. And then we want to coordinate policies and leverage investments. And I think this is kind of interesting because you're aligning federal policies and funding to eliminate barriers. They're doing that at the federal level, but what we want to do is we want to break it down even further, and we want to do that by working with all of our partners. We want to bring in HG, we want to bring in the counties, we want to bring in the cities, and start eliminating the barriers and the silos. And so it's going to require collaboration, leveraging funding, accountability, and also looking at the effectiveness. So that's really it's going to be important for us. And the last goal is valuing community. Do I not advance? There you go. Are you guys, I get going and then I forget to advance, sorry. So we want to invest in healthy, safe, and walkable neighborhoods at all levels. And you're talking about rural, urban, and suburban. We want to support regional collaboration efforts and local organizations that commit to adopt integrated plans, strategies, and management tools to become more sustainable with a long-term vision of how we want to grow. So let me touch a little bit now about our approach to the grant. Too far. There we go. So here's what we want to do. We want to develop regional priorities and goals, establish locally appropriate and performance goals and metrics, provide strategies for meeting those priorities and goals, prioritize the implementation of the regional plan, and engage residents and stakeholders throughout the process. And let me say, got to engage residents and the stakeholders in this plan, because part of this is going to be an educational process about how this region is going to grow. And they have to understand how we think we're going to grow and the population grow. So how are we going to get there? Here's a slide that shows the organizational structure. And blue, you see a governmental advisory board and a coordinating consortium. And then in the, is it purple up on the screen? I can't. Yeah, it is purple. That's what's called the Regional Transect Group. And then on the right side of the slide, you see the Technical Advisory Group. And I'm going to touch on these very, very quickly. I don't know which slide. I've got two different screens doing two different things here. That one. Okay, there we go. Actually, I've moved on to the next one. There we go. So the advisory and the coordinating group. So the governmental advisory board and the coordinating committee of the consortium, these two bodies will lead the Regional Sustaining Planning Initiative. It will guide the development of the regional visioning guiding principles for the region. The governmental body is composed of chief elected officials responsible for implementation in the 13-county region. That's really your cities and your counties that are involved in the governing advisory body. In the consortium coordinating body is a diverse set of stakeholders, including government and nonprofits. And Wanda mentioned them when she was up there talking about it. So let's move on to the technical advisory group. We have 7 people or 7 groups that will be advising us on transportation, housing, social equity, environmental, economic development, and healthy community. These subject matter experts will help us with reviewing existing materials, developing sustainability strategies, and identifying connections between those different sectors. So they will be really important in helping us. We need to rely on the experts. Then we have the regional transects, and I don't know how many of you transects, but what we're looking at are urban, suburban, rural, coastal, and other. As you can see at the very top, you have more of a rural environment, but as you go down the slide, you'll see more dense development occur. Regional representatives will review strategies and metrics for applicability in those transects that are up on the slide. And then I want to talk a little bit about public participation. We will develop a plan to help guide us through the process, and we plan to have public input. And public input is really key. We want to make sure that we have a good discussion with everyone. So what will this bring to the region? I think it's an opportunity for the region. And I believe in taking advantage of opportunities. If we don't, we're going to miss out on something. And we have to show the federal government that we are interested in acting as a region. Now, I want to say something. This morning, as I was leaving, that they don't know I'm doing this, by the way, until I do it. I had an opportunity. And my neighbor gave me a couple of peppers out of his garden. One is a ghost pepper, and it is the hottest pepper in the world, and he's made me promise I wouldn't let anybody bite into it. And the other pepper is a little Brazilian pepper, and when it turns red, it becomes a real sweet chili pepper. These peppers needed the right environment to grow. It's soil. We needed the right pH balance, the sun, the water, the right fertilizer amount. And when you think about the environment and what we needed to grow these little peppers, the same is true for our region. We need the right environment. We need to think about our water. We need to have the right people at the table so that our region can grow in a responsible manner. You know, when your flowers or your vegetables don't get what they need, they start to look straggly. The question and the challenge for us today is, how do we want our region to grow? And what do we need in terms of the pieces to make it grow responsibly and rather than in a straggly look? Thank you.
Diana will now introduce Paul Wright with the Local Initiative Support Corporation, who will start you off with a question about your neighborhood.
Paul designed and now manages the Houston Let's Go Neighborhoods pilot program, which launched in 2009. Go Neighborhoods has now engaged over 1,000 neighborhood residents and stakeholders to create a new vision and quality of life of the neighborhood. Bright is here today to help us discuss the livability principles, how a sustainable community planning grant would impact the clients and the community we serve.
Good morning. Okay, so my role is to get us to talk and discuss these livability principles. Okay, I'm going to open up with a quick comment, and then I'm going to start this process, and your table facilitators will be working together. First comment, I just want to ask the question, how many of you here today have been part of a regional planning process? Okay. Many of you have. That's excellent. And perhaps some of you may be asking, what's different about this? And if you've heard comments and the overlay of the Sustainable Communities Planning Grant this morning, and I'd just like to point out, and our facilitators talked about this earlier, that it's important to put this in context. There's a significant change in the type of the federal funding that's coming through the three agencies, HUD, EPA, and the Department of Transportation. And these 6 livability principles, which, by the way, have been put around the room here today, if you haven't seen them, and they're also listed and bulleted in your handouts. But these 6 livability principles are the principles that they're using to work between their agencies. They are now collaborating. It's also the principles that I believe they're going to look at when they screen through these grant applications. So these type of principles and this way of doing our work in communities is here. It's at least here for the next 3 years. And so I want to just encourage you, today you have an opportunity to think fresh and anew about these type of principles, dialogue with some of your peers and colleagues here about what it means, and we want to capture some of your ideas so that we can include that in the grant process and let this be the beginning and the first step of our discussion about sustainable communities in our region. So the first thing I want to do, this first question, I want you to turn to your neighbor. Let's just start the conversation one-on-one. Just turn to someone next to you, and I want you to simply talk about what makes a neighborhood or a town a great place. I want to let you have 3 minutes for one person to talk and about 3 minutes for the other person to talk, and then I'll break you and give you about 6 minutes. So go ahead and turn to your neighbor and talk about what makes a neighborhood or a town a great place.
After you have answered the question with your neighbor, please let your facilitator lead the next discussion sessions on public engagement and the 6 livability principles. You will now hear closing remarks from Jeff Table with the Houston-Galveston Area Council.
Our analogy, other than to say that your input is priceless. Those of us on the consortium that are tasked with putting this into an application and submitting it by August 23rd not have done this without your input. So I just want to applaud your efforts this morning. I look forward with our whole team into getting into the details of what you covered, but I want to just share a conversation that I eavesdropped on a little bit to show you what I think we achieved today in terms of this silo busting and talking about things in integration and in coordination. I was hearing a group talking about transit, and I said, well, the issue with transit, we can't have buses going everywhere in an 8,000-mile region. The key to transit, really, is trying to make it so you don't have to leave your neighborhood as often. then take the bus trip on your longer commute. Well, how do we make it so you don't have to leave your neighborhood as often? Well, we need to make sure that the businesses and job opportunities, recreational opportunities are all right there. And the people who work at the grocery store and community center, are they going to be able to afford to live in the neighborhood too? How are they going to get to work if they're transit dependent or walking dependent? We've got to make sure we've got affordable housing. We've got to make sure that there's assistance to local entrepreneurs to run those services so we don't have to leave this money. That gets us back to our design and development regulations. How do we look at how we lay out buildings and street systems and subdivisions? And how do we apply economic incentives? Are those tax abatements and other funding programs really connected with that vision of more self-contained neighborhoods? And that gets back into public policy, and then we kind of get back around to, well, but if the sidewalks aren't any good, and if they're not ADA accessible, then we're excluding that type of interaction that we started at the beginning. So we get right back down to the micro scale. So it becomes this very holistic and circular discussion that we're going to need to have on every single one of these principles that we talked about today, and that we don't in our existing individual plans really have any mechanism to do. So I want to make sure that that we don't leave it here. On your program is a link to a website that HGAC is hosting. I hope we can link that throughout all of your organizations as well. And let the conversation continue there. Now, our schedule is a tight one. As I said, we need to get this grant submitted by August 23rd, but I think the program has already done what I think the administration intended, is now that this ball is rolling, I don't think it can stop. I speak for at least the key partners I've talked to throughout the day. We're going to do something on this, whether we get this grant or not. We're all in this together now, and we need to keep this dialogue rolling. So I think the first place we can start keeping together is by staying in touch that stakeholder section we have on our website. We'll keep you posted of any further developments in the grants, any follow-up meetings. If you have other comments you didn't think of today, other organizations you're aware of that weren't here, or other people who need to get engaged, it's all available there on the website. Additionally, I want you to think seriously about what your organizations may be able to contribute to this effort. Now, I'll give you 3 big food groups of those categories to think about. First of all, as Marlene mentioned, we're going to have a whole bunch of specific committees that are working on these issues. Some of them are going to be focused on specific aspects like transportation, affordable housing, social equity. The other group that's going to be cross-cut with that is, well, how do we apply these in different realms of the transect? Because those issues are going to have different challenges, different solutions in central Houston, in Galveston Island, Waller, Texas, and northwest Harris County. So we're going to need people who can reality check what we've talked about today in all these different contexts. So that's number one. Number two, any sort of technical assistance or other support group. I've got some interesting and attractive offers just today. So that kind of dialogue on how we can help, and I said it's kind of like the universe is ever expanding. We are by no means omniscient in what all you can offer to us, so we need to find out. And finally, and I think most importantly, going back to some of the other input we had, is are you willing to be that local champion? People in vast number of neighborhoods and a huge amount of organizations, they don't necessarily know me, they don't necessarily know Marlene, but they do know you. What you've heard today and what you think you can bring to it, and communicate with people who know and trust you we need that network of champions. So those would be the three things that I would suggest you consider. And encourage you to look at the stakeholder forum that we have online and hopefully commit to being a part of this effort in one way or another. I'm just going to close with one final thought, and then we'll open it up for questions. As I said, this is an effort of a scale and a scope unlike anything that's been tried here. And it's not going to be easy. When we think about places that supposedly have solved all these problems, these great sustainable places that you hear about, it wasn't easy in any of those places either. There were groups like this that were at the onset of all of those programs, and guess what? They didn't all agree on everything. There was baggage, I'm sure, that came along from other efforts, and that's all going to be the case here too. We understand that, and I think it's important, frankly, with each other about that. As long as we're all still going on the same long-term journey, we'll work through those rough patches. But stay with us, and I think may have some fits and starts as we go along, but see where we are when we end up, and I hope we'll have a wonderful reunion celebration at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you again for coming today. We know that we've hit our time allotment here, but I'm willing to stay as well as the other partner organizations and answer any questions you have as long as you want. And I'll take the first one now. We'd like you to complete it here. If you're unable to, Diana, do we have any arrangements for mailing it or faxing it in? All right, well, again, thank you to all the staff, Fifth Ward MSC, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you for tuning in and joining our webinar. Please refer back to this website for updates and ways to provide your feedback.